Ever seen this guy? A total superstar of science. That's young Albert Einstein. And I'm sure this looks familiar. The most famous formula in the world. And guess what? Einstein came up with that formula right here in this city, Bern, in Switzerland.
A tranquil city with just under 150,000 inhabitants. Bern lies in the German-speaking part of the country. Many people think that Zurich is the capital of Switzerland. Not so. Bern is the seat of the parliament and government. Today we're exploring Bern, following in the footsteps of Albert Einstein. Where did he live and work? What does his signature formula mean and why is it so famous? And how many of these Einstein benches can be found in Bern?
Don't worry though, you don't need a physics degree for our little tour.
Albert Einstein came to Bern in 1902. At that time, the old town looked almost exactly as it does today. It's hardly changed since the 12th century and has been declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Einstein too would have stood in front of the Minster. At 100 meters, it's the tallest church in Switzerland. There's another landmark here that's been a key part of the cityscape since the Middle Ages.
Einstein probably stood right here at some point in front of the so-called Zytglogg, the clock tower. Time was something that totally fascinated him.
At the top of every hour, tourists flock to the Zytglogg tower to watch the medieval clockwork performance. Einstein came to Bern in search of a job. Here at the patent office, he finally found a well-paid permanent position. He was 22 years old and already had completed his physics degree, but nobody wanted to hire him as a scientist. At the patent office, the genius had to evaluate other people's inventions. Unfortunately, the desk he stood at and his office aren't open to the public. Instead, you might like to visit Einstein's apartment. He lived on the second floor of this building, from 1903 to 1905, along with his first wife, Mileva, and their son. He'd climbed these stairs every day after work.
Ja, willkommen.
Dankeschön, Lukas Stege, guten Tag.
Einstein-Wohnung, wir sind ein Museum und eine Wohnung.
Paul Burkhardt from the Einstein Society of Bern shows me the apartment. Bedroom, kitchen, children's room, living room. This was Albert, Mileva and Hans' little kingdom of their own. It had no study, and yet it was in this apartment that the famous formula was born.
Wie hat Einstein das eigentlich gemacht? Er hatte ja einen Vollzeitjob und noch eine Familie zu Hause. Wie hat er dann die Zeit gefunden, sich um die Wissenschaft zu kümmern?
Ja, ich glaube, er hat daneben während der Arbeit Tagträume gehabt, weil er hat gesagt, diese Analyse von Patentantrieben, das geht bei ihm schnell. Das konnte er rasch erledigen und dann hat er sich das überlegt. Geschrieben hat er aber dann hier im Haus.
Also hier ist die berühmte Formel entstanden?
Da hat er dann eben die Papers geschrieben, ja.
Supported by his wife Mileva. She was a mathematician and Albert could discuss his ideas with her, developing them further. Then, in 1905, the hour was nigh. Einstein published not just one, but 5 groundbreaking articles on light, matter and energy. Among them was his special theory of relativity, the formula energy equals mass times the speed of light squared.
Könnten Sie mir seine berühmte Formel ganz kurz und knapp erklären?
Man kann die Energie in eine Masse umwandeln oder die Masse in Energie. Das heißt also, man kriegt sehr viel Energie, wenn man eine kleine Masse ändern kann.
From 1905 onward, Einstein's scientific career slowly gained momentum. But he only became a universally known superstar when he received the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1922.
Wie war es denn danach? Ist er bescheiden geblieben oder ist ihm das vielleicht so ein bisschen zu Kopf gestiegen?
Also er war ja immer überzeugt von sich selber, schon in diesen Jahren. aber die Welt hat ihn nicht zur Kenntnis genommen. Und dann wurde er zum Star und hat doch ein bisschen seine Bescheidenheit verloren. Ständig, wenn eine Fotokamera irgendwo war, hat er sich hineingestellt, damit er fotografiert werde.
Ein bisschen eitel.
Eitel sicher, ja.
Time for a break. My destination is a location called Altes Tramdepot. There is also an Einstein bench here. He looks to be about in his mid to late 20s. I would guess so in the age of his years in Bern. The Altes Tramdepot scores points for its view, its homebrewed beer, and its delicious Rösti, a thick potato pancake typically served with fried bacon. I go for the vegetarian option, which is served with egg.
This is really good. By the way, Einstein didn't eat meat, but only later in life on his doctor's advice. When he was younger, he actually enjoyed hearty meat dishes.
Now that we've fortified ourselves, the tour continues. Bern is really putting on a great show today. It has a flair that feels almost Mediterranean, don't you think? All throughout the old town, you'll find fountains topped with beautiful figurines. The water is safe for drinking. The historic cellars here are also fascinating. Once used for food storage, today they house bars, restaurants and shops. Also particular to Bern are the 6 kilometers of arcades, which provide wonderful shade in the summer. I'm making a short stop at the University of Bern. Here we find our third Einstein bench. In 1908, Einstein rose to the rank of lecturer at the university, working for a time there. Then came the offers from Zurich, Berlin, and later from Princeton in the USA. You can learn more about Einstein's life story at the Einstein Museum. The Wall of Mirrors introduces you to Einstein's world of thought. Where does light come from? What is an original? What is a reproduction? What could infinity mean? Room by room, you're taken through the stations of Einstein's biography. His childhood in Ulm and Munich, his Jewish family background. His years in Switzerland, where he gradually made a name for himself in scientific circles. In 1914, he moved to Berlin. At the Prussian Academy of Sciences, he was able to devote himself entirely to his research. He would divorce Mileva and get married again to his cousin Elsa. As the Nazis grew ever stronger in Germany, Einstein raised his voice against militarism and war. In 1933, he emigrated to the USA.
Throughout his life, Einstein changed his nationality several times. German, Swiss, Austrian, American. At one point, he was even stateless. I call that a true citizen of the world.
He retained his Swiss citizenship until his death in 1955. The dropping of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945 was a life-changing event for him. Einstein was deeply shaken by the scale of destruction and death. More on that in a moment. The museum also lets you get to know Einstein a little as a private person. He loved sailing and playing the violin. He was a passionate smoker, and he obviously had a sense of humor. This photo was seen around the world. It's more than enough material to strike up a conversation with Aline Minder of the Einstein Museum Bern.
I've always wondered, why is Einstein sticking his tongue out? Is he making fun of me? Fun of us?
Well, the photo was taken on Einstein's 72nd birthday in Princeton. And right after the party, photographers were waiting for him outside the venue. And he got annoyed with time, and instead of smiling, he stuck out his tongue. And the fun thing is that he really liked this picture, so he used it then later as a greeting card.
This museum also talks about the atomic bomb, a pretty dark topic. In what way is Einstein's theory of relativity connected to the bomb?
Well, the formula E equals mc² says that even tiny amounts of mass can be converted into huge amounts of energy. So that is the principle behind nuclear fission, which is the basis for the atomic bomb. But Einstein himself was never directly involved in this program. And after the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, Einstein was deeply shaken and he was devastated and really regretted the use of that bomb. Back then, he became an even stronger advocate for peace and disarmament, and he kept on warning the world of the devastating power of nuclear weapons.
Is there any peaceful use to the formula?
Well, it allows us to use nuclear energy in a peaceful way, for example, for generating electricity. But I think more importantly, it reminds us that every scientific discovery can bring a lot of progress and very interesting knowledge, but on the same time, it can also bring a lot of destruction and harm. So I think it reminds us how scientists or science cannot be seen disconnected from ethics or social responsibility.
In front of the Einstein Museum, we find the fourth bench dedicated to the superstar of physics.
And this is where our tour ends. So, whose footsteps should we follow next? Where do you want us to go? Tell us in the comments.